Hello and welcome to yet another episode of me rating fan-made cards I found on the internet. And today we have a fan-made mini expansion made by Reddit user Star Trek 238, and it's centered around Mercury, one of the planets in the solar system, of course. And directly on the first card we look at today, we see the new tech, the Mercury Tech. I think it's the Mercury Tech is also an other fan-made cards for Terraforming Mars, so I don't think he's the first one to introduce that one. But I like it, having another planet tech. We have in the base, in the official game, we have the Jovian Tech, the Venus Tech, and the Earth Tech, of course. And if we follow the idea of colonizing the whole solar system, then more planet techs, of course, makes sense. Maybe something like a lunar tech would also make sense, or something yeah, one of the other, like Neptune or something. But yeah, this expansion is centered around Mercury, and this first card is called Crater Surveying, and it's similar to small animals in the way that you can add one resource per gen on it, and every two resources grant you a point. But it's significantly more expensive, costs 11 instead of 6. It doesn't have a global restriction, so you could play it immediately, but it also doesn't reduce plant drop. So it's kind of similar, but also not. The Mercury tech definitely is useful. You will see that there are a few strong payoffs and also some discounts for Mercury tech in this mini expansion. So this is nice, but I think in total this expansion, as I said, has 24 cards and only 18 Mercury techs, and you kind of need to play it together with the Venus expansion. So even if you're just playing with base game and Venus, 18 out of how many cards are there in base game and Venus? There are a lot, right? You just check. We just take base game and Venus, then it's already 257 project cards, and just 18 of those have Mercury tech. So the tech is nice, but to find another payoff is kind of unlikely. And then the effect, I think, is just too weak. Playing this like really early on is a really hefty price. It's compared to nitrate reducing bacteria, right? This gets you a point every second gen, and nitrate reducing bacteria gives you a point every fourth gen, but it starts with a point immediately. So it's more like every third gen, but that point is the R step, and this is just a point at the end of the game. Nitrate reducing bacteria already isn't a great card, and that one costs also 11, right? Yeah. So I'd probably pick nitrate reducing bacteria over this one. If I like draw this for free, then I might play it early on because the action is useful as a stall action, and I think this data type resource is also used in other expansions, fan-made expansions. And if you find like other cards that can combo with it, then maybe it's nice. But I think it's a pretty weak card. Let's get to the next one. Dawn City. And this one is actually a remake of an existing Venus Next card. There are, I think, 3 updated cards in this one, Dawn City, and then 2 more, which we'll get to later. And what he did do here is just give it a Mercury Attack, and I think other than that, it's unchanged. Let me check. Dawn City. Normal version costs 15, has a requirement of 4 science, city tech, space tech. Yeah, it's exactly the same. Just gains the Mercury Attack, which is nice. And the reason behind remaking this card is because the flavor text itself on the base game card or on the Venus Next card says that it's a city on Mercury. So it only makes sense for it to include a Mercury Attack if you're introducing an expansion centered around Mercury. And well, it makes the card stronger, and it's already a great card if you can play it, just because it's a really good point card. And like the space tag is one of the tags that has the most discounts on it. And then the city tag can be useful for like mayor or diversifier, but you need to get 4 science tags first, so unlikely that it will be relevant for that. But I like that he also upgraded some of the, or updated some of the base game cards, which made sense. This is one of them. So let's hop to the next one. And it's another city card, Dusk City, another city on Mercury. And this one has 4 tags, which is really nice. I don't know if there are other cards in the game that have 4 tags. Maybe Field Kept City? I think that one has 3 tags, right? Yeah, it's 3 tags. If you know of any other cards that has 4 tags, let me know. Ah, yeah, there's one, right? What is it called? It has a science, plant, animal, and microbe tag. And I think it's in colonies. Let me check. Yeah, ecology research. That one has 4 tags. All right. Back to this card though. Dusk City has all of these 4 tags, which is nice. You need a Mercury tag, which is hard to get, as I said, because you only have 18 Mercury tags in the game. It costs 27, so really pricey. Grants 2 points immediately. You place a city on the reserved area. Is there like a reserved area on Venus, on the Venus next board? No, right? That's Dawn City, but not Dusk City. So maybe this comes with something where you can place it on. And then it grants 3 MC and 1 power prod. So if you can play this, this is definitely not bad. You also get like 3 steel or 2 titanium back. So realistically, this costs only 21. So 21 for 2 points, 4 useful tags, 3 MC prod, or 1 power prod. It's alright, I guess. If you have a lot of titanium, then it can be really nice. And playing this early on surely is great, because it gives you some development, or like playing it in the mid game is nice. Insane for diversifier, really strong for what's that one corp from Colonies? Eridor, which grants 1 MC prod for every new tech that you get. So for that one, it's insane. But I think it's also a bit expensive. If you're just looking for the 2 points in the late game, and you don't care about the city because you can't place any greeneries around it, you don't care about the prod anymore because it's late game, then it's overpriced for that. But in the mid game, if you need power prod, and if you have Mercury tag down, then this surely is great. I also think that this is one of the cards that's influenced by the Pathfinder expansion. I've never played this one. Pathfinder expansion is also a fan-made expansion that's quite well known. And I think 3 of the cards in here are straight up taken from that expansion because they are also centered around Mercury. And then this one I think is heavily influenced by it, but I could be wrong. But as always, I've linked the original Reddit post where I found these cards in the description. So check that one out. And I think there's a discussion about these cards in the comments, also about the cards that were taken from the Pathfinder expansion. And definitely give that post an upvote. I really enjoy these fan-made cards on Reddit, especially if someone makes the effort to like introduce a whole mini expansion. That's really, really nice. Check that out. So let's get to the next one. Dusk Laser Mining, and this one is actually another upgrade. And this is on a card that I think didn't need an upgrade. Like, it just gets a Mercury Attack, which is not that much, but this card, I think, in my opinion, is already overpowered. Because in the base game, it just has the space tag, it requires 2 science tags, costs 8 MC. I think this is a promo card here. Costs 1 power prod, gives you 1 titanium prod and 4 titanium. So in total to play this, you pay 11. Because you buy this card for 3, and it costs 8, obviously. And you get 12, like 4 titanium, which is worth 12 MC back. So this costs nothing to play. You even get 1 MC worth back. And then you also exchange one power prod for one titanium prod. So this is an amazing card, in my opinion. Also, if you're going for science, then it's possible that you already have some space discounts from like Quantum Extractor or Mass Converter, and also the other space discounts work very, very well with science, like Space Station, or it's also, is that one called that comes with colonies, which is completely busted. Oh no, Warp Drive, yeah, Jesus Christ, yeah. So if you have space discounts, then this gets even better. And with the Mercury Attack, of course, it's also really, really strong then. So great, great card. Just an update. But let's get to the next one. And this is another one with 4 attacks. Also requires a Mercury Attack. And you see for cards like these Mercury Attacks are pretty useful. I don't think that there's a card that requires 2 Mercury Attacks. Just having one is already good enough to play most of these cards. And Dyson Swarm, again, has 4 different attacks. It costs 20, lets you use up 1 titanium and 3 power to increase your power prod by 1 and gain one of these swarm resources, which you put on here. And every resource is worth 1 point at the end of the game. And I think the concept is really cool because it makes sense that Dyson Swarm is a concept where you put like all of these little solar reflectors around the sun. And of course, you need energy and some materials to put them up there, and then they generate basically infinite power as long as the sun lives on. And yeah, it's a really interesting card. I don't know if it's worth it though, because with the 3 power, you could also trade. You could use it as feed. And just gaining 1 point and another power prod, and you also need to put a titanium, and then the card is pretty expensive as well. I don't know if that's worth it. I think you could make it a bit cheaper. It wouldn't be too broken because you first of all need the Mercury Attack to play this, and getting a Mercury Attack is pretty difficult. Then you need the money to get this down, and then you also need titanium and power to keep this running. So that's pretty difficult to get all of that. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept. You could make this like 3 or 5 MC cheaper, and it would still work in my opinion. Let's get to the next one. Giant Solar Array. And I think this one is a pretty strong card. Or like not pretty strong, but it's an upgrade to the Giant Space Mirror, which is in the base game. Because that card costs 17, so basically just 1 MC less than this. It only has space and power tag, and it grants you just 3 power prod. And this card costs 1 more, grants you a Mercury Attack, which we saw as useful if you want to play some of these other Mercury Attacks. And it also gives you the choice of, instead of getting 3 power prod, getting 4 heat prod. And sometimes this is exactly what you want. And you can pick this from your starting hand, and then if you're not quite sure yet what you want, and then decide later. So I think this card is just better than Giant Space Mirror, because it almost never hurts you paying 1 MC more, and you get the choice of getting 3 power prod or 4 heat prod, and you also get the Mercury Attack. Of course, if you know that you will definitely just take the 3 power prod, and you know, but that's kind of hard to know, that you don't need the Mercury Attack, then Giant Space Mirror is better. But yeah, like in 99% of cases, I'd say this one is better. Let's get to the next one. Hermes Resort. And yeah, this is the first situation of the combo potential between Mercury and Venus. This is definitely there in this expansion. So Venus and Mercury are next to each other, of course, and there are a few cards that combo between Venus and Mercury. And this one just gives you a Mercury tag, costs 10 MC, grants a victory point, and you get 1 MC prod for every Venus tag. So if you're going for Venus and you draw this, then it's great. But many of the Venus next cards aren't that strong. So you're maybe, if you have a few of them, you maybe get like 3 MC prod out of this. And that's not too strong. I think you could make this like 2 MC cheaper and it'd still be fine. Of course, if you find a few really good Venus cards, but like some of the really good ones are locked behind global requirements, like stratospheric birds or Venusian animals or sulfur-eating bacteria. Like getting those down probably will take you to the mid or late game, and then Hermes Resort isn't that strong anymore. So I think, again, it could be a little bit cheaper. But let's get to the next one. And yeah, this is another example of these planetary attacks working together. The inner trade network. You need Mercury, Venus, and Earth tech, which are the 3 planets that are closest to the sun, I believe. I'm not an expert, but I think, yeah, should be. And if you have those down, you can play this card. Costs 13, grants 1 space tech, 2 points, and you get a global discount on all cards by 1. Another global discount in the game. I don't know if that's necessary. How many are there already? There's Earthcat, Research Outpost, AGT, and Skydogs. I think there's no other global discounts, right? So you could get to -6 already, with this one to -7. If you get all 5, I think. That's pretty strong. But even so, if you just draw this card and you have these tags, or you plan on getting these tags down, then this card is basically a no-brainer. 13 MC on a space tag for 2 points is already quite good, or like already playable. There are many situations where you run out of targets to pay for with titanium, and then just playing this in the mid to late game for the points is nice, and then the global discount is also nice. You will probably never play this in the first gen because getting these tags down is quite difficult, but pretty nice. I'd say this is a strong card. Magnesium Mine. Costs 14, grants a Mercury Attack. You get 1 Venus step and 1 steel prod. I think this is a bit overpriced. Jump back. Let's look at a few of the simplest cards that let you increase Venus. I think, what do we have here? For example, Neutralizer Factory. Costs just 7, lets you increase Venus by 1 step. Of course, it has the requirement of it, having Venus at 10. There's Spin-Inducing Asteroid, which costs 16 and lets you increase Venus 2 steps. I think that is much better than Magnesium Mine. Of course, there's a max requirement on that one, but Venus almost never gets rushed up, so Spin-Inducing Asteroid often is just playable still in the mid game. And there's Water to Venus, which costs 9. Of course, it's an event, so it doesn't give you any permanent tags. But this one costs 5 more than Water to Venus, and you just get a steel prod for it. And Water to Venus also is a space event, which gives you a lot of combo potential. Of course, with the fact that you have to buy those cards, then maybe it's a bit more balanced out. But I think this card is a bit weak. I think you could make it 1 or 2 MC cheaper and it'd still be fine, especially because Venus steps and steel don't really work together. If you're going for Venus, then you're probably not. Then you probably also want a bit of titanium prod. Steel prod probably isn't that useful. But yeah, it's an okay card. And if you require the Mercury Attack for a stronger payoff, then this is definitely not a bad card to play in the early game. The problem is in the mid to late game, this is basically unplayable. Just because you're paying 17 when you also need to buy a card for 1 Venus step, and you don't care about the steel prod anymore, so then it's pretty useless. Next one, Magnetosphere Research. Costs 14, grants a Venus and a science tag. 1 TR, and then you either draw 1 card or 3 cards if you have 3 Mercury attacks. These Mercury attacks are rare, as I said. Even if you just play with Venus next and base game and then this mini expansion, such a little percentage, such a small percentage of cards that hold these Mercury attacks. So getting 3 is pretty difficult. And if you just draw 1 card from this card, then it's pretty bad. Because for 14, you could also get like 2 TR steps with, what's it called? The space game event. I don't remember. So bad. But it grants 2 TR steps, so it's basically better than this one. Release of inert gases, yeah. So yeah, I don't think this card is really strong. If you already have 2 Mercury, I mean, you only need 2 Mercury attacks because this one has 1. So if you already have 2 Mercury attacks and a seed is in a draft, then you definitely keep it. It's pretty good then. But if you have 0 or just 1, I probably wouldn't speculate on this. Because if you don't find another one, then this card is pretty bad. Of course, if you desperately are looking for a science tech, this can happen, like if you have AI Central on hand or AGT, you just need 1 more science tech, then you can just play this. It's not horrible, getting 1 point and 1 card, so I guess that's fine. Next one is another update on an existing card. Mercurian Alloys is not a base game card, not a promo card, I think, or is it Terraforming Colonies? I don't really remember. Let's look it up. It's another promo card, okay. In the base game, it just has a science tag and no Mercury attack, of course, and it makes all your titanium resources worth 1 extra. And you need 2 science tags to play it. It's really cheap in the base game, and if you can play it, then it's already a really good card. And with the Mercury attack, it just gets better. It's funny because all of the cards that he updated, and these all made sense because they all had like Mercury either in the text, like in the title or in the flavor text. But all of these cards were already quite strong. It was like Dawn City, Mercurian Alloys, and what was the other one? Let's have a look. The other one was Dust Laser. Yeah, this one is also really strong. So yeah, so all of these cards didn't need an upgrade because they were strong enough on their own, but it made sense to give them a Mercury attack, so I guess it's all right. So let's get to the next one. What was that? Yeah, Mercury Metro. This is another Mercury payoff, but it doesn't only count your Mercury attacks, but the Mercury attacks played by everyone. And if you play this, you get 1 point, costs 1 power prod, and you get 1 MC prod for every Mercury attack played by anyone. It's kind of like the Mercury version of Martian Rails, but not as an action card, but as just a green card. I guess if like 1 or 2 players go for Mercury, then this is okay in the mid game. Can like give you 3 or 4 MC prod, but it's really expensive for that because you also need to factor in the cost of the power. If you have like tons of power because you have played like Quantum and Mass, then maybe you can play this. But other than that, like a power on average costs like 7 or 8 MC, so this costs 20, 21 plus the 3 MC to buy it. Really expensive. I think this is overpriced. This could easily cost 8. Let's say it costs 8, then you pay 11 to buy and play it, and then another 7 or 8 to get the power. That's like 19, 20 MC, and even if it gives like 5 or 6 money prod, it's still not too strong. So I think you could easily make this 5 MC cheaper. Let's get the next one. Mercury Mining, another simple card. I think this is actually fine as it is. Gives you a Mercury attack, which can be useful for all of the other cards we saw. And gives you a steel and a titanium prod at the cost of 1 power prod. If we compare it to building industries, which costs 6, right? Building industries. Yeah, that costs 6. Gives you 2 steel prod. So you pay 2 extra to exchange 1 steel prod for 1 titanium prod. I guess you could have made this 1 MC cheaper. Would have been fine. But I think it's also alright how it is. Yeah, not much to say about it. If you got this in the early game and you have an efficient power producing card like power plant or geothermal power, then you can of course play this to get a little bit of development. But like even starting in the mid game, this is already not that great anymore. But that's the case with a lot of like simple production cards. So let's get to the next one. Mercury Probe. This one is interesting because this max requirement up here, if I see this correctly, if we zoom in, sorry for the bad quality, has a red outline, so a maximum of 1 Mercury Tech played by anyone. So even if your opponents have played 2 Mercury Techs, then you cannot play this anymore. And it's a pretty simple card, costs only 4, it's an event with a science tag, so pretty nice if you have Mars, Media Group, if you're playing IC, you have Olympus Conference, there's a few payoffs for this. And then a Mercury Tech. This Mercury Tech, I don't know, are there any? Yeah, there's one card that makes Mercury Techs cheaper that we will get to later. Okay, I was wondering if there's a reason that's on an event card, but okay. And you basically just get 1 point and 1 card. Pretty alright. It's similar like to Tech Demo or something, but the point makes it even a good mid-game play. Like Tech Demo is always a good play, so yeah, this is an alright card. I'd probably pick this up in the draft if I see that I can play it, or like it's not amazing, but if I have at least one of the payoffs like Media Group or Mazu, then this is really good. And it's pretty cheap, so if you have a global discount, then it's already really good. And if you draw this for free, then you always play it because like the cost of buying this card has a high percentage of this total cost that you need to pay for this card. So if you can forego that cost by drawing this for free, then this card is really good. Yeah, I talked about the Mercury discount, and there it is, Mercury Way Station. It's similar to Venus Way Station, but cheaper, and that makes sense because there are less Mercury attacks than Venus attacks. And this cost 7 just makes every Mercury attack 2 cheaper. Is there a point in Venus Way Station? Venus Way Station. Yeah, there's a point in Venus Way Station. Okay. The Space Station is the most expensive one. Costs 10 and gives 1 point, and then a discount on all space tags, and there's Venus Space Station, costs 9 and this costs 7. Space Station is by far the best out of these 3 because there are many more space tags than Venus or Mercury tags. But if you have like a few Venus tags on hand, or if you go for something that's called not Venus tags, Mercury tags on hand, or if you go for kind of like a Mercury strat, but like it's hard to go for a strat that only includes 18 cards, then this card is okay, but it's not that great. I wouldn't blindly pick this up just because there are so little Mercury attacks. I think that's like a weakness of a lot of these cards. There are just too few of these Mercury attacks, but they're still pretty interesting. So let's get to the next one. Museum of Colonization. Requires a Mercury tag and a Jovian tag. Grants 2 points as a building tag, and you draw a card. If you can play this, then this is pretty nice because especially if you include like a few expansions, building tags get less and less, and especially mid to late game building tags that grant points get less and less. That's like one of the weaknesses of Steel Prod. You just run out of cards to play with it. In the base game, I think it's balanced fairly between titanium and steel, but with all of the expansions, especially colonies, you get a lot more really good titanium targets and a lot less good steel targets. So seeing something like this makes me happy. It's a good card. If you get these 2 tags and you can play this with steel, then it's pretty good. Off-world infrastructure. This is a really interesting one because this one has a planetary tech. And I think I'm not 100% sure because like I haven't played any of the other fan-made expansions that include this tech because I know this is not like an original idea. There are other expansions that include this planetary tech. I'm not quite sure for how they work. I think they are just like a Joker tech, like the wild tech, but only for planetary techs like Earth, Jovian, Venus, and in this case also the Mercury tech. So this is basically just a Joker tech for these 4 tags, and you also get 2 MC prod. Pretty nice, especially if you're going for a Jovian strategy, because then this is like a Jovian tag for Terraforming Ganymede. If you have like Cartel on hand, this is nice. Then there's a few Venus payoffs and of course a few Jovian payoffs. If there's Rim Settler in the game, you need to keep this in mind. It's a tag for that. Of course, it doesn't work on the other Jovian multipliers that are not Terraforming Ganymede, because this should work like the wild tag, where it only counts as a tag when you do your action. So when the other multipliers are counted at the end of the game, this doesn't count as a Jovian tag, I guess. But maybe the rules stated otherwise, and it does count as a Jovian tag at the end of the game. Could be, and that would make it significantly stronger because then you could use this for all the multipliers. But yeah, it's an interesting card, especially for this expansion. I think there's, if I remember it correctly, 18 pure Mercury attacks, and then there's 1 planetary attack. So 19 out of these 24 cards that were introduced with this mini expansion can be used in such a Mercury combo strategy. So this one is nice. And I don't know why it always makes this card really big at the start, but I don't care. Let's get to Polar Outpost. Interesting card. Just grants you an action that gives you either 1 plant or 1 titanium. It costs 1 power prod, grants 1 point, costs 11. So this is really expensive. Like if the power costs 8 on average, then this costs 19 plus 3 to buy it, so 22 to buy and play. And then you just basically get the choice of plant or titanium prod. Of course, you get it in the first gen as well. When you play it, you get 1 point. I think you could make this. You could make it like get 2 plants or 1 titanium. Of course, getting 2 plants in most cases is better than titanium. But let's say you're not like you've used up your plants and it's the last gen. You don't need any more plants. You can get the titanium, or you need the titanium to play a really strong card. If this was just without the titanium, but you can get 2 plants, I'd say it would be stronger, but not strong enough yet. And gaining 2 plants or 1 titanium would be interesting. So I'd probably do, buff it like that. You definitely can't make it gain 2 titanium. This would be a bit too strong, I think. So I'd say gain 2 plants and 1 titanium. And that's really nice because that's 2 plants that you have at your disposal whenever you want, but they can't be destroyed by an asteroid. So you can be at 6 plants and then you can use this and place a greenery, but you don't run the risk of, like, if you have 8 plants, you can get demos downed and all 8 plants are destroyed. And if someone demos downs you at 6 plants, then you still have these 2 plants in the back pocket and can use them later on. But with just 1 plant, I think it's a bit too weak. Radiation Shielding Lab. Costs 8, requires 3 science tags, grants you a science tag, and a Mercury attack, and a point. And as it has a space discount. I think there are enough space discounts in the game. As I said earlier, there are a lot of space discounts, and I feel like in the expansions, space tags and titanium just have received a lot of buffs. Also with a few of the promo cards, we saw Dusk Mining earlier, which is a really good space tag that grants titanium prod. I think we don't need any more space discounts. It's nice to see a space discount that isn't a space tag itself, but there are a few of those already. We talked about quantum mass and warp drive. I think we can do without this card. I'd rather see another card with a Mercury Attack that isn't a space discount. Like, you could also do make this card like cost 3 MC and just remove the space discount. And then you pay 3 MC for a point, a science check, and a Mercury Attack. Basically, it's like Search for Life, but without the action, but instead you get just straight 1 point and the Mercury Attack, but you also have the requirement. I think that would be fine. Good card in the science combo then. Of course, this card is also an amazing card in the science combo, because you want to play space tax in the science combo. But yeah, I'd get rid of the space discount. Relay satellites, yeah. There's another card that uses this data resource. Costs 12, Mercury Attack and space tag. When any event is played, add 1 data here. So even if your opponents play events, okay, that's interesting. And you also start with 2 data on this card. And to get the data off the card, you also need to play an event. So it's basically a little bit like Olympus Conference. You can't actively remove the cubes. You need to do something else to remove the cubes and draw cards. But it works for event tags and it works for all event tags, not only your own. I think this is really interesting. I'd probably always pick this in my starting hand, because how many events are played in a, like in a 2P game, there are maybe at the end of the game 15 events played or something. And that would mean this card draws you 5 cards throughout the game. Something like that, because every 3rd card probably is 6 cards because you start with 2 data on it. And in a 3-player game, it's even more. So I think this is really strong in the early game, but then it falls off fast because yeah, the shorter the games, the time span after you play this, then you less cards you draw with it. But I guess Olympus Conference and Mars U are the same in that aspect. Of course, you also can't know how many events your opponents will play. And maybe they see you play this card and will decide on playing fewer events. But if they find really strong events, they want to play them either way. Like, nobody's not going to play Demos down just because you have this card played. So I think playing this in the early game is a really good play. Probably, like, it's a bit on the expensive side with 12 MC, but if you have titanium to play this, then it's already really good. And the Mercury Tech can be useful as well. Solar Capital, this one is really interesting as well. It's extremely pricey, 34, one of the most expensive cards in the game, but it also grants 4 victory points. Lets you place a city on the reserved area again. I have no idea where the reserved area is for Dusk City and for this Solar Capital. Maybe this should come with a board that indicates Mercury. Space and city tag. Same with all the other off-Mars cities. Not all the other off-Mars cities, because Dawn City now has a Mercury tag, but yeah. And you need a set of these 4 tags. So you need 1 of each, and then you get 4 MC prod. But if you get multiple sets, you can also get more MC prod. So if you have 2 Mercury tags, 2 Venus tags, 2 Earth tags, and 2 Jovian tags, then you get 8 MC prod. And I think if you get just 4 MC prod, then this card is priced well, because it grants 4 points, and you can pay for it with titanium. So you can get, and it has like can get space discounts. So for 4 MC prod, this is a pretty good mid to late game card, I think. But if you get 8, well, it's hard. It's really hard to get 12 MC prod out of this. But I'd say 8 MC prod is doable. If you get 8 MC prod out of this is completely busted in the mid game. If you play it in the late game, then of course the MC prod won't matter. So it's just for the mid game that the MC prod will matter. But with the expansions, it's also possible that you're swimming in titanium. Maybe there's Triton in the game, or then there's really strong titanium producing cards in the expansions. And then if you're playing with Turmoil, you can get Titanium to be worth 4 every other gen with Unity. Then there's Advanced Alloys, Mercurian Alloys. So it's easy to get this card down if you have a bit of Titanium and a bit of setup for it. And then the 4 points are just really, really strong. One of the... like there are only a few cards that give you 4 straight points. Like there, of course, are the Jovian multipliers, but they can also be just worth 1 point. Then there's ICS, I think, grants you 4 points. Yeah, there's not a lot of cards that Interstellar, yeah, Interstellar Colony grants you 4 points. There's a few other cards, I think. But yeah, I think this is an interesting card. There's like a dream scenario where you get this down pretty early on for 8 and C4. That would be busted. But yeah, nice one. Let's get to the next one. Solaro Vision, which is of course based on Eurovision Song Contest, because it's an event that grants you points just because it's like a media event. And you need one of each Planetary Attack, which is hard to get. So that's also why Solar Capital probably is balanced fairly. But it's hard to get all of these 4 attacks. But then it's a cheap event that grants you points. I think it's fine. If you can play this, you basically... and you're not going like for a rush strategy where you need all your money to finish the game quickly. But if you're going for like just a middle of the like a normal game or even a long game, and you meet the requirement, then you basically always pick it up. But if you're missing 2 tags and one of, especially if one of those is Mercury tag, which is really rare, then you're probably not picking this up. And it's also not busted or anything. I think it's fairly priced. I wouldn't make it any cheaper. I wouldn't make it more expensive. It's a fun concept. I like these cards that have these like that are based on events and not especially on media events. It's really funny to think about a world where we actually colonize the solar system and then there's a competition like this between the different planets. That's really funny. Solarpedia, again, another card that requires all 4 planetary tags. Costs 14, has a building tag. That's really nice. I enjoy building tags being added to the game in the expansions. Gets a point and just has an action, draw a card. I think this is fair. It's a bit on the expensive side for card draw. But if you compare it to like Development Center, of course, it's much easier to get Development Center down. But getting it running is actually a bit more expensive, and it doesn't grant a point. So I think it's fairly priced. It's hard to get down though. I think you can make it like 1 or 2 MC cheaper, and it's still fine. But I enjoy this being a building tech. I really like it. But also, again, I think the concept that there's like a physical library for like all the knowledge in our solar system, that's funny. Probably won't happen. Terraforming chain. Really interesting concept. I read the flavor text on this one. You mine on Mercury, the titanium. You build floaters. You put you bring them to Venus. You capture the atmospheric gases on Venus. And you bring them to Mars to terraform. That's the concept behind this card. Really futuristic, really cool, funny picture here. I think this card is okay. Getting 3 plants and 3 heat is really strong. But you only get this every other gen and you need to pay titanium for it. So it's pretty expensive. Also the card itself is pretty expensive. But if you have a card like Solar Capital on hand, or these other 2, but these other 2 are not as strong. Solarpedia is pretty good. If you have a card like these on hand, then getting these 2 planetary tags, and especially the 2 that are probably the most rare, like the Mercury Attack is definitely really rare. And then if we look at Venus versus Jovian, Venus has 32 in the base game plus Venus, and Jovian has just 14. They have only 14 Jovian tags in the... Wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, Venus next only adds 2, I think. Atmoscoop and Iosulfur Research. And then the base game, they are pretty rare. Okay, I accept that. And yeah, then there are 7 more added with colonies. I didn't know that Jovian Techs are that rare. That's interesting. Okay, well, I guess the Mercury expansion isn't that like unrealistic with only 18 Mercury Techs. Probably everyone was wondering what I was talking about here with these techs being so rare when Jovian techs are that rare. But the thing is, Jovian techs are rare, yes, but they include the Jovian multipliers, which are really strong and make the Jovian techs much more impactful than the Mercury techs are in this one, because there's, I think, could be wrong, and we see one of those, but I don't think there's something like a Mercury multiplier in this expansion. But yeah, if you need these 2 tags, then this card is probably okay. And if you have a really, really good other Venus floater card, like Floating Habs, then you could also use this to place floaters on there. But using it just on this one to get plants and heat is pretty slow, pretty expensive. I don't know if I like it. And this was actually the last card. Okay. So no, there's no Mercury multiplier in this expansion. It would have been funny if like there was like a really expensive card like Solar Capital that was actually a Mercury multiplier. That would be interesting. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this mini expansion. I think quite a few of these cards were like really conservatively balanced and could have been priced a bit like cheaper. But really interesting concepts and really cool artwork, really cool card design, really nice flavor texts all along. Definitely check out the original post. As I said, I have linked it in the description. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know in the comments what you thought about these cards and if you do disagree with my notion about those. And yeah, if you did enjoy the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.